Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to be looking at a chapter from The Complete Book on Bankruptcy by Peter Francis, Geraci Law.
Okay.
We're going to try and figure out what happens to co-signers when you file for bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's a question that we get quite a bit, actually.
Chapter starts out with a guy named Tim, who is a post office worker, and he's got a car loan and some bills, and then he's got a loan from a credit union with 3 co-signers on it, and he's thinking about filing for bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you kind of wonder, like, what's going to happen to those 3 people who co-signed that loan for him?
Absolutely. It's not just a solo journey, right? When someone files for bankruptcy, there are a lot of people that it can potentially impact. And that's one of the things that Geraci Law really tries to highlight in this book.
Yeah, and one of the things they stress right at the beginning is before you even think about filing for bankruptcy, make sure you talk to your co-signers.
Absolutely. Communication is key in these situations, You want to be transparent with the people who've agreed to co-sign for you, and you want to make sure that they understand the potential implications.
Yeah, because there's like all these different scenarios that could come up. Like, what if one of your co-signers has already filed for bankruptcy?
Right. Or what if they're in a position to take over the loan themselves?
Exactly. Or maybe they're struggling too, and then they need to file for bankruptcy as well.
Yeah, there are so many different situations that can arise, which is why they also recommend a joint consultation with an attorney so everyone can kind of sit down and strategize together.
Now, something that I was really surprised about was that when you file for bankruptcy, it doesn't automatically get the co-signer off the hook.
Yeah, a lot of people think that, but that's not how it works.
I always thought that, like bankruptcy, you just kind of wipe the slate clean and it's like a fresh start.
Well, it is a fresh start for the person filing, but the creditors can still go after the co-signers for the debt.
So how do the different types of bankruptcy come into play here?
Yeah, so let's talk about Chapter 7 first.
Oh, okay.
Chapter 7, bankruptcy, is kind of like what people typically think of when they think of bankruptcy. It's all about getting rid of debts, wiping the slate clean and starting fresh.
Yeah.
But one thing to keep in mind is that even though Chapter 7 gets rid of your responsibility for a debt, it doesn't get rid of the co-signer's responsibility.
So in Tim's case, if he files for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, he's off the hook for that credit union loan. But those 3 co-signers are still responsible.
Right. That's exactly it. And, it's important to keep in mind that the person who files for bankruptcy can still choose to make payments on that debt even after the bankruptcy is over.
So it's not like they're totally abandoning their co-signers. They can still help out.
Yeah, it's called reaffirming the debt, and it's definitely something to consider if you want to protect your co-signers.
Okay, so what about Chapter 13 bankruptcy? How is that different?
Chapter 13 is more about reorganizing your debts instead of getting rid of them altogether. So you basically come up with a plan to pay back your debts over a period of 3 to 5 years. And the cool thing about Chapter 13 is that you can actually prioritize certain debts in your payment plan.
So like in Tim's case, if he wanted to make sure the credit union loan got paid off first, he could do that.
Exactly. And that would protect those co-signers from collection efforts because the debt is being addressed in his repayment plan.
So let's talk about Tim's situation specifically. The book outlines a couple different paths that Geraci Law might suggest.
Yeah, so the first option is a Chapter 13 plan where Tim would pay back both his car loan and that credit union loan in full over time.
And that would protect his co-signers, and he would get to keep his car.
Right, exactly. But there's also a second option they present, which is a Chapter 7 discharge.
And that would wipe out all his debts, but wouldn't that leave the co-signers in a tough spot?
It could, but remember he would likely reaffirm his car loan, which means he's committing to continuing those payments. And for that credit union loan, he could choose to continue making payments even though he wouldn't be legally required to.
Yeah. So it's like there's still a moral obligation there, even if he doesn't have a legal obligation.
Right. It really comes down to personal responsibility and doing the right thing.
Before we move on, we should probably mention that the views and opinions expressed on this show are for informational purposes only and do not constitute financial or legal advice.
Absolutely. You should always consult with qualified professionals for personalized guidance.
Now, speaking of expert advice, the book shares some really interesting takeaways from Geraci Law, specifically about co-signed debt and bankruptcy.
Yeah, one of the things they emphasize is that you shouldn't delay filing for bankruptcy just because you feel obligated to your co-signers.
So you're saying it's okay to put your own financial well-being first?
Well, it's about making the best choice for your situation while also trying to minimize the impact on others.
And they also point out that an experienced attorney can really help you navigate these complexities, understand your options, and create a plan that works for everyone.
Yeah, they even say that they have solutions tailored to all kinds of different financial situations, so seeking a consultation is always a good first step.
And while we're talking about resources, they also offer a free non-bankruptcy credit counseling course.
Oh, yeah, that's a great resource. It's available at infotapes.com, and it covers all sorts of things like credit debt and how to manage your money.
Knowledge is power, right?
Right.
Especially when it comes to finances.
Absolutely. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions.
So we've talked about a lot of the legal and financial aspects of bankruptcy, but one of the biggest takeaways for me from this chapter is that filing for bankruptcy doesn't have to be a solo journey.
Yeah, that's so important to remember. It's about communication, understanding your options, and seeking expert advice when you need it.
And it's about working together to find solutions that benefit everyone involved.
It can be really empowering to have that support system in place, especially when you're dealing with something as complex as bankruptcy.
It made me think about, like, the people who co-sign loans for others. I feel like they have the best intentions, but they don't always fully understand what they're getting themselves into.
Right. It's easy to want to help someone out, especially if it's a friend or family member, but co-signing a loan is a big deal.
Yeah, you're essentially putting your own credit on the line.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to get expert advice before you agree to co-sign for anyone.
Like, talk to an attorney or someone who really understands the ins and outs of these kinds of loans.
Absolutely. You need to make sure you're fully aware of the risks involved and what your options are if things don't go according to plan.
And it's not just about protecting yourself either. The book talks about how sometimes the person filing for bankruptcy might feel hesitant to do so because they don't want to let their co-signers down.
Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in. You want to do what's best for your own financial well-being, but you also don't want to burden the people who helped you out.
It's like a moral dilemma.
Right, and sometimes filing for bankruptcy is the best solution for everyone involved, even if it means the co-signer has to take on some of the debt.
Especially if they were fully aware of the risks when they signed on.
Exactly. It's all about finding the solution that causes the least amount of harm overall.
And that's where having an expert to guide you can be so helpful. They can help you weigh the pros and cons and come up with a plan that makes sense.
You know, one thing I really appreciate about this book is that it doesn't shame people for being in debt or for having to file for bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's very straightforward and matter of fact about it.
Right. It just presents the information and lays out the options without any judgment.
And it emphasizes that there are solutions.
Yeah.
You don't have to suffer in silence or try to figure everything out on your own.
And it's not the end of the world either.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy can be a fresh start, a chance to rebuild your finances and create a more stable future.
Speaking of a more stable future, the book also talks about the importance of financial literacy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The more you know about credit debt and how to manage your money, the better off you'll be.
It's like giving yourself the tools to make informed decisions and avoid those financial pitfalls that could lead to debt in the first place.
And that's why resources like this book and organizations like Geraci Law are so valuable. They provide education guidance and support to people who are struggling with their finances.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the legalities of co-signed debt and bankruptcy, the importance of communication, and the power of seeking expert advice.
Yeah, we've also touched on the emotional and personal aspects of these situations, which are often overlooked.
It's not just about numbers, it's about people's lives.
Exactly. And approaching these issues with empathy and understanding is so crucial.
The book also emphasizes that bankruptcy isn't something to be ashamed of.
Right. It's a legal process that's designed to help people get back on their feet.
And it's more common than you might think.
Oh, yeah. Definitely hundreds of thousands of people file for bankruptcy every year.
It's a way to address a difficult financial situation and move forward. One thing that really stood out to me about Geraci Law is their philosophy of nice people doing nice things for nice people.
Yeah, I love that it really speaks to their approach and their commitment to helping people.
It's about treating people with respect and dignity, regardless of their financial situation.
And empowering them to take control of their finances and create a brighter future.
Which brings us back to that free credit counseling course they offer.
Mm.
It's all about knowledge being power.
Right. Absolutely. The more you know, the better choices you can make.
And the less likely you might be to find yourself in a situation where bankruptcy is the only option.
But even if it does come to that, there's always hope.
There's always a path forward.
And Geraci Law has been helping people find that path for over 40 years.
They've helped so many people get back on their feet financially.
So whether you have co-signers or not, don't hesitate to reach out for help if you're struggling.
There are solutions out there, and you don't have to go through this alone.
That's such an important message.
I think we've covered a lot of important ground today. We've talked about the ins and outs of co-signed debt and bankruptcy, the power of open communication, and the importance of seeking expert advice.
Yeah, it's been a really insightful conversation.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with a powerful thought from the book. Don't worry about your credit. Worry about getting out of debt.
I love that it's such a simple but profound statement.
It really shifts our focus from worrying about our credit score to taking control of our finances.
It's about making informed choices and creating a more secure future for ourselves and our loved ones.
Well said. Yeah, it really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
It does, instead of obsessing over that credit score, which can feel so arbitrary, sometimes it's better to focus on the bigger picture.
And getting your finances in order.
Exactly.
Speaking of getting your finances in order, I wanted to circle back to that free credit counseling course that Geraci Law offers.
Oh, yeah, that's a great resource.
It's at infotapes.com, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I feel like that's such a valuable tool for anyone who's, maybe struggling with debt or just wants to learn more about managing their money.
Absolutely. It's a great way to be proactive and kind of get ahead of any potential problems.
Yeah, and it's not just about bankruptcy either. It's about, making smart financial decisions in general.
Right. It's about building good habits and setting yourself up for success.
And even if bankruptcy does become necessary, it's good to know that there are firms like Geraci Law out there who can help.
Absolutely. They have so much experience in this area, and they really know how to guide people through the process.
And they do it with that, that nice people doing nice things for nice people philosophy.
Exactly, which I think is so important. It makes such a difference when you're dealing with something as stressful as bankruptcy.
It's about feeling supported and understood.
Right.
At the end of the day, we're all human and we all make mistakes.
Yeah, and it's okay to ask for help when you need it.
Well, I think this has been a really insightful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the legalities of cosign debt and bankruptcy to the emotional and personal aspects.
It's a complex topic, but hopefully our listeners feel a little bit more informed and empowered now.
I hope so too. And before we sign off, I just want to remind everyone that the views and opinions expressed on this show are for informational purposes only and do not constitute financial or legal advice.
That's right. Always consult with a qualified professional for personalized guidance.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Likewise, it's been great.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back soon with more insightful discussions on personal finance. Until then, take care.